Ramshochontawa, Rabolochon Rabab Shena Mingibet Shotapota Autoreta Australeta, or Rabach Bardaya Begzetochung, Goda Halele Mahianana, Utli Hiwi, Morachla Eyalele Modale Bi Soprayota, Shimi Ila Mariam, Ana Hoyan Chered Diochon Idjo, Hadia Azlanakama Bi O Khurza Bi Lashana, it's English, Ka Iqaraka and Arkhan. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 5th day of the Gilgamesh Festival. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the Cabrogal people of the Darug Nation, the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here with us this evening. It's been an extraordinary week of learning, discussion, and reflection, 5 nights celebrating the legacy of Gilgamesh and the enduring influence of ancient Assyrian civilization. This festival would not be possible without the generous support of our sponsors, our major sponsor, the University of Sydney, as well as Ronco Interiors, Eden Venues, Croix, Crispo and MP, Greenway Medical Centre, and Arthur Jewellery. A special mention to Arthur Jewellery, whose designs are inspired by the beauty and legacy of ancient Assyria and are on display tonight. Each piece tells a story, blending traditional symbolism with modern design and celebrating one of the world's oldest civilizations through art and craftsmanship. We'd also like to extend our thanks to Isaac Ibrahim and his team, our videographers for tonight, and Showtime Productions for their outstanding audio and visual work. We'd also like to extend our thanks to Fairfield City Council for their ongoing generosity and partnership, and also to Donald Barjo for his incredible war chariot, as well as his various pieces that are on display tonight that are inspired by the reign of Ashur-Nasirpal II around the time of 860 BC. Wonderful pieces that bring the Assyrian history to life. To open this evening's program, I'd like to invite Professor Emeritus Garry Trompf, patron of the Gilgamesh Festival, to introduce our first speaker of the night, Dr. Louise Pryke. Please welcome Dr. Garry.
This will be the last time I talk at this conference, I guess. I might say something more at the festival itself. But can I start by asking, apart from Dr. Louise Pryke, whom I'll be introducing, is there anybody who's here for the first time in this particular venue? Nice. Or you'll be completely and utterly confused about where we're at. And my role is to try and, assess how this conference is arriving at a certain place. Who knows what or where. Anyway, I did not know that Dr. Lewis Siddle, who has been a fellow student of Dr. Pryke, was in our midst. The last time has he returned? Okay, but it's wonderful to have these two people because they're representatives of my institution, the University of Sydney, one of your sponsors. But without further ado, before I introduce Dr. Louise, I must say we're in a pretty pass trying to work out what is going on here. We are moving now away from Gilgamesh. We've been through the correspondence of great kings. We're moving towards the time of the fall of the Assyrian Empire and how the ideas furthered themselves through space and time into other cultures, and we even got challenged in Professor Parpola's talk about the figure of Ninurta as a kind of Jesus figure prototypically as Assyrian culture's gift to the Christian world. I suppose I should tell you that we're moving now more from what I introduced last time, the anthropological side of things, and this in my mind, of course, into the mythological and psychoanalytic side of things. I feel, because I did lecture at the Carl Jung Institute in Zurich on all this stuff, I should be able to say something sensible about symbolism that we're approaching, the idea of the dream and its significance with all the signs that might portend. So, I mean, we're going to look at one motif about homesickness, and that's going to be very important, I suppose, to reinforce what I've said about the kind of warrior mentality, the need to manage warriors who are leaving home and going to mysterious places elsewhere from the centre of the Assyrian Empire, and they'll get homesick. That's how I would interpret one side of the use of the Epic of Gilgamesh for a warriorhood state, the Assyrian Empire. I mentioned last time about sex and warriorhood. Well, Ishtar, second subject that'll be addressed by Simo. I mean, take a Neo-Assyrian text. You probably remember how Sargon II, the first great king of the Neo-Assyrian Empire, named himself after a very ancient king of Sargon, called Sargon. Well, I mean, we have an inscription, Neo-Assyrian text about the birth of that Sargon, and it's kind of prototypical of the Moses story where his mum or Kera puts him in a basket in the marshes and lets him off floating. Hopefully somebody will find him. And he eventually becomes the king, but before he becomes the king, he has to enjoy the comforts of, guess whom? Ishtar. And I remind you that Ishtar is kind of associated with the city life, not the warriors. I mean, just imagine when you're a fighter, it's very unwise to have sex before battle. It's a universal fact. I mean, most cultures I know, and I work with very many, follow this rule. But you've also got to remember that Gilgamesh repudiated Ishtar because he and Enkidu bumped off Huwawa, the guardian of the forest, and she got very angry. And at the same time, when she saw him in all his splendour, she wanted to marry him or kind of propose, and he fobbed her off very rudely. I think the famous saying that Professor Daly gave about, "You're just somebody who will pinch my shoe," or like somebody who pinches a shoe, has already been used as a brilliant metaphor. And so we're on a subject with Ishtar that you'd suppose, well, it's a very controversial thing to do, but that's the warrior knowing jolly well that he'll be hooked up with somebody and that'll ruin his chance of exploits. Which, by the way, doesn't really need absence of sex. Sex is a modern concept. We are talking about generative power and vitality. I must explain to you that a lot of ancient religion, well, a lot of continuing religion, is about victory and prosperity. I mean, look at the United States of America, and you'll see that. So it's got to do with very strong principles and forces that are appealed to in the universe, and and your access to the divine world is going to be crucial. Like, take the dream, for example. If you're a warrior like Gilgamesh, the dreams you're going to have are going to be crucial portents or omens of whether you're going to be successful or not. So entry by dreams into the spirit world will be important. By the way, all the gods are very testy they're like Enkidu in that respect. If you cross them, they'll get incredibly angry, like Ishtar did over Hawaii. You've got to keep the rules, and that's another thing you've got to remember about the Epic of Gilgamesh's use by the Assyrian Empire, because it's a slave empire. It's a military machine. It's kind of a predecessor to Rome as a military machine. We've got to face up to the fact. However, we're now getting to the point where we look at all these symbols in this epic and how incredibly powerful they are for future generations as literature and also as the melting pot of the mind for building symbols of unity, integration, like as Simo was talking about, the kind of androgynous melding of Ashur and Ishtar into one to give incredible generative power. So I just want you to see where we're going. We're going actually probably a bit further, because the long-term effect of all these things in the world of the Greco-Romans and the takeover of the Middle East by the Greeks will have important archetypal consequences from the Mesopotamian world influencing these other ones. If you're interested, Hercules, Professor M.L. West would want to say, is based on Gilgamesh. So the myth has kind of wandered, and its potency is the hero who has ordeals and, can conquer all odds, even if they're divine antagonists. So enjoy yourselves. I have great pleasure now in introducing Dr. Pryke, my new colleague who's come from Macquarie University to the University of Sydney, and is our eminent resident scholar working on Gilgamesh, has written a book about him and the epic, and I'm sure you'll be fascinated to hear what she has to say. Welcome, Dr.
Right. Well, thank you, Garry, for that lovely introduction. I feel so excited and honoured to be here for the first time tonight, sharing my research with you. Just because you mentioned Jung and Freud, I gave a paper a couple of years ago it was called Gilgamesh on the Couch, and it was about the influence of Gilgamesh on the development of the modern science of psychoanalysis. And there's a correspondence, we have letters between Freud and Jung, where they actually talk about the Epic of Gilgamesh and the symbolism. And they're absolutely fascinated, particularly with the relationship between Enkidu and Gilgamesh. And Freud has this amazing line where he's trying to understand how Enkidu fits into the whole thing. And he says to Jung, "I'm just going to surprise you with the idea that Enkidu is Gilgamesh's afterbirth." And I don't know what to make of that, and I'm just as surprised as I think Jung would have been, but it's something for us all to think about. Anyway, but tonight I'm talking about roaming the wilderness, travel, home and belonging in Gilgamesh. There we go. And I've got a clicker and everything. So, as the heroic protagonist of the most famous epic narrative from ancient Mesopotamia, few literary figures can claim to be so widely travelled as Gilgamesh. So the Gilgamesh epic begins and ends in Uruk, but for most of the epic in between, the hero is either planning to leave home or on a long journey. His brief return home in Book 6 ends in disaster and serves to propel him further to travel to the furthest reaches of the known world. From the depths of the ocean to the path of the sun and through impenetrable mountain passes, Gilgamesh voyages ceaselessly on. Considered in this light, did something happen? Not as much as I would have wanted. Oh, it sure did. Okay, we're good. Considered in this light, travel is a central theme of the epic, and this theme is constantly paralleled with ideas of belonging and home. So this paper will explore how travel and home are related to one another in the epic, and how these ideas inform on the nature of being a Mesopotamian hero. So heroes play a central role in Mesopotamian literature, culture, and religion. Among numerous heroes, none is so famous as the eponymous protagonist of the Epic of Gilgamesh. So Gilgamesh is the world's first tragic hero of ancient literature. And the Epic of Gilgamesh, as I think we all know, is an literary masterpiece from ancient Mesopotamia, an area roughly analogous to modern-day Iraq, although scholars like to quibble about the borders, and of course it's dynamic because over time the borders shift. The epic centres on the journey of the legendary character of Gilgamesh, a hero who is celebrated in the legend for his exceptional strength, wisdom, bravery, and beauty. The first stories about Gilgamesh are thought to have been written down around 2100 BCE, so in the Ur-3 period, yet they're known from copies later in the Old Babylonian period around 300 years later. And there is some debate about whether the character in the story is based on a historical king, but if so, Gilgamesh would have ruled around 2700 BCE. The tradition associated with the epic is that the story is based on a historical figure with numerous historical kings claiming to be his close relative. In epic literature, legendary characters such as Gilgamesh, Enkidu, Etana, and Lugalbanda undertake journeys of varying lengths, often involving foreign environments that contain both natural and supernatural elements. While travel is integral to many heroic narratives, time spent away from home is not presented in a wholly positive light. For Enkidu and Lugalbanda particularly, time away from home results in homesickness and longing for familiar places and companions. For the hero, participating in great deeds brings fame and a chance for their name to live on beyond the limits of their lives. These heroic deeds often involve long and treacherous journeys. While some heroic activities such as wrestling cosmic bulls can be undertaken close to home, the life of a hero in the ancient world seems to necessitate the accumulation of many ancient frequent flyer miles. Travel is a common feature of the heroic oeuvre, and it is also associated with deities, so that's something that they have in common. Heroes travel for different reasons, but beyond surface differences, the motivation for heroic journeys is usually related to the need to find a legacy. For example, in Etana's case, the motivation is to find a cure for his childlessness. A problem, while though common, holds the potential for a great deal of heartache. Etana's lack of an heir is particularly problematic because of his role as king. Etana's story shows some similarities with Gilgamesh. Like Gilgamesh, Etana dreams about his travels preceding the voyage, and both heroes search for a magical plant capable of superseding mortal limitations. While the search for a legacy draws the hero away from home, it's often sentimental reasons that lead them back home again. For Lugalbanda, for example, leaving home is motivated by the desire to assist in a battle, but he finds himself longing for his home and his family. In another section of the myth, Lugalbanda races home to consult the goddess Inanna. These narratives conceptualize home as a place of relative safety associated with loved ones and a close connection to the divine. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the king's perpetual movement towards the cedar forest and then towards the edges of the known world becomes part of his heroic identity, signalling his exceptionality. Yet conversely, concepts of home and belonging remain central to the narrative. Enkidu's longing for home and Gilgamesh's complex relationship with his mother shape their characterization. For Gilgamesh, the connection to Uruk and his mother Ninsun provides him with a great legacy, yet the hero's narrative is dominated by his efforts to find fame and longevity in distant locations. Gilgamesh must cross Mount Marshu, the waters of death, and journey through the path of the sun to visit the home of the flood survivor. The fantastical qualities of Gilgamesh's journey are reflected in the increasing exoticism of the ecology surrounding him, including the creatures that he encounters, including the scorpion men and women and the stone ones. Travelling to distant and supernatural locations can offer great riches, but mortal limitations can make difficult work of capitalising on the opportunities on offer. While visiting the flood survivor Utanapishtim at the end of the journey, Gilgamesh has to accept the finitude of human life. At the same time, he is offered a rejuvenating plant that would allow him to relive his youth. Like Adapa, the hero is unable to capitalize on the opportunity, perhaps reflecting the seriousness with which the limitations of mortality are presented in the text. So the hero's means and pace of travel may also reflect their liminality. Gilgamesh and Enkidu travel from the hero's home city of Uruk to the Forest of Cedars in record speed. As noted by George, if the expression of time is taken literally, the hero undertakes a journey in 15 days that would ordinarily take 7.5 months. The heroic Lugal Banda shows a similar speediness after he is gifted with the talent of super speed from the Anzud bird. For Etana, the mode of travel to heaven, in flying on the back of an eagle, involves a mixture of divine and animal elements, reflecting the hero's unique position among humanity, as well as the risk involved in attempting to stretch beyond those limits. Despite their abnormal capacity for travel, heroes are not immune from the dangers, drudgery, and despair that can accompany long journeys, and the extended absence from home and from community. Gilgamesh's journey leads him beyond the path of the sun, and at this stage of his travels, when he's furthest from home, the physical appearance of the notably handsome hero is said to have begun to suffer. As he himself notes to Utanapishtim, he says, "Why should my cheeks not be hollow, my face not sunken, my mood not wretched, my features not wasted? Should there not be sorrow in my heart, and my face not be like one who has travelled a distant road? Should not my face be burnt by frost and sunshine, and should I not roam the wild, got up like a lion?" Later in the same tablet, Gilgamesh laments the sleeplessness that's accompanied his travels. He says, "I went journeying through all the lands. I passed time and again over arduous mountains, and I crossed time and again all of the seas. My face did not have enough of sweet sleep. I scourged myself by going sleepless." Gilgamesh further describes the physical toll taken by his travels on his muscles and his clothing. The change in Gilgamesh's appearance creates a potent contrast with his earlier physical perfection in Tablet 1. The transformation of the king's corporeal state reflects developments in his characterization, as bodily beauty and vitality are central to his components of royal imagery that we see. Yet the epic traveller must face more than a physical cost for his voyage. There is frequently an emotional toll as well, which can be seen in the hero's sense of isolation and homesickness. So we have seen that home in Mesopotamian epic is a place associated with safety, loved ones, and social status. Further, as the king of Uruk, Gilgamesh has serious responsibilities in leading the city and its people. In theory, for Gilgamesh, leaving this space is a complex business requiring serious thought. Before the journey to the cedar forest, the inhabitants of Uruk show mixed feelings about undertaking this trip. This perhaps puts things in too much of a neutral light. Everyone but Gilgamesh predicts disaster on the journey ahead. Enkidu, for example, tries to dissuade Gilgamesh from his planned trip, but Gilgamesh ignores him and calls him a weakling. He says life is short and given over to mundane activities. He says, as for man, all that he ever did is but wind. While Gilgamesh's speech reflects the view that a lasting legacy and a type of immortality can be found in long and dangerous journeys, everyone else in Uruk is more concerned about the potential for these journeys to end in his premature death. His mother Ninsun and the elders of Uruk all try to dissuade Gilgamesh from going to the cedar forest. Reflecting the complexity of the text, both perspectives are shown to hold some truth. The trip to the cedar forest will indirectly lead to Enkidu's death, but the hero's adventures there will become part of their lasting heroic identity. Gilgamesh's mother plays a key role in protecting Gilgamesh on his journey by gaining the assistance of the solar deity Shamash. The relationship between Gilgamesh and Ninsun is complex, but also foundational to the presentation of home and belonging in the text. Through a close analysis of this connection, we see Gilgamesh's travels to different places can equally be seen to put distance between the hero and his home. So Ninsun, Gilgamesh's mother is a powerful character in the epic. While perhaps best known for her role as the hero's mother in the Epic of Gilgamesh, Ninsun is also a dynamic figure in the broader context of Mesopotamian literary and religious culture. In a narrative involving numerous strong female actors, Ninsun stands apart in terms of her closeness to the hero and her importance in his identification and his legacy. In the Epic of Gilgamesh and the Sumerian poem, The Death of Gilgamesh, Ninsun plays a pivotal role in the progression of his story. Gilgamesh's mother Ninsun first appears in the standard Babylonian version of the epic, coupled with Gilgamesh's father Lugal-Banda. The text says, "Wild bull of Lugal-Banda, Gilgamesh, perfect of strength, suckling of the exalted cow, wild cow, Lady Ninsun." Even for Mesopotamian heroic epic, this introductory passage is heavy on the bovine imagery, a feature of the text that perhaps requires some comment. Ninsun is at times described as a kind of deified cow, as can be seen on the Gudea cylinders, and her cult may have originally been associated with wild cattle. Although originally imagined as a cow, Ninsun was human in nature and gave birth to human offspring, as can be seen in the rulers Shulgi, Onamu, and Sin-Kashid. Gilgamesh's close emotional ties with his mother Ninsun form one of his most significant relationships. This relationship is perhaps surprising when considered against modern-day assumptions of heroic conduct, which can frequently be seen presented in terms of hypermasculinity and independence from one's parents in popular culture. The connection of Gilgamesh and Ninsun, however, is closely entwined with Gilgamesh's identification as a hero and a king. His divine mother lends him supernatural qualities. The presence of wise mother figures is a feature of Mesopotamian literature more broadly, such as in other epic narratives. Two poetic legends involving Lugal-Banda also present the hero longing for his mother's company. These compositions are Lugal-Banda in the Mountain Cave and Lugal-Banda and the Anzud Bird. In both legends, the hero misses his mother while spending a long period of time away from home. Both legends also feature the hero missing the advice and the company of their father. The text says, "Lugal-Banda lies idle in the mountains. In the faraway places he has ventured into the Zabu Mountains. No mother is there with him to offer advice. No father is with him to talk to him. No one is with him who he knows, whom he values. No confidant is there to talk to him." The absence of a father figure for Gilgamesh through most of the epic may create further emphasis on the relationship with his mother. The combination of the trope of the absent father and the wandering hero, situated in a story involving a young king, raises the narrative stakes for the hero's safe return. There is no elder king minding the shop in Uruk while Gilgamesh voyages on. Paternal guidance is substituted by the voices of the city's elders who urge Gilgamesh not to undertake his dangerous journeys. Although, as noted previously, it is a trope in Mesopotamian oeuvre for the hero to long to be with his parents, the maternal lap is a complex area. The female lap shows some variance, but is rich with symbolism involving concepts of maturity and gender. That's where I should be. In the Sumerian myth of Gilgamesh and Humbaba, Enkidu's failure to match Gilgamesh's enthusiasm for the quest ahead results in a speech from the hero. In this dialogue, Gilgamesh speaks in a manner which hints at a lack of appropriate respect for his family and his mother's lap. He says, "By the life of my own mother Ninsun and of my father holy Lugal-Banda, am I to become again as if I was slumbering still on the lap of my own mother Ninsun?" This comment from Gilgamesh is striking, as the mother's lap is generally symbolic of safety and can also represent royal legitimacy. Maternal symbolism is often featured in royal praise poetry, such as that of the historical king Shulgi of Ur. Shulgi has a praise poem where he has Ninsun speaking to him, saying, "Shulgi, you are a pure calf born to me. You are a good seed of Lugal-Banda. I raised you upon my own holy lap. I have decided your fate with my holy bosom. You are a good fortune which fell to my share." So while Gilgamesh speaks scornfully of Ninsun's lap, Shulgi uses the goddess's body as a symbol of his closeness to the divine and his legitimacy. In the projected speech of the deity, the reciprocity of the maternal bond is expressed. Shulgi brings good fortune to Ninsun, and she decides his favourable fate. Gilgamesh's scoffing is preceded in the text of Gilgamesh and Humbaba with a reference to another mother's physicality. This time, the divine mother is the goddess Ningal, mother of Utu and Inanna. The text says, Enkidu is saying, proud Utu, yes, that's where I should be, proud Utu has already gone to the bosom of his mother Ningal. Gilgamesh, how long will you sleep for? The sons of your city who came with you should not have to wait at the foot of the hills. Their own mothers should not have to twine string in the square of your city. The contrast between positive maternal imagery used by Enkidu and negative maternal imagery given by Gilgamesh illustrates the deep divide between the pair in terms of their attitudes towards the big journey ahead. The juxtaposition of maternal symbolism does more than emphasise the discord between the two companions. It also throws a negative light on Gilgamesh's speech and actions. While the deity Utu is said to be travelling home to be with his mother, a symbolic reference to the lapsing of daylight, Gilgamesh, in turn, refuses to do the same. The attempt by Enkidu to use maternal imagery to dissuade Gilgamesh from his plans holds a tragic irony. Enkidu has no mother or father of his own, a situation that is frequently contrasted against Gilgamesh's divine parentage. While Enkidu speaks of the need to spare the mothers of the square warrior of their warrior sons, Gilgamesh shows no such concern over his own mother's feelings. Gilgamesh's cavalier behaviour towards his mother foreshadows his later use during combat of the names of his parents in vows he makes, and then breaks, to Humbaba. The use of his parents' names to fortify a false oath is an act of sacrilege, and the underhand nature of Gilgamesh's actions are denounced by the forest guardian Humbaba himself in a version of the Sumerian story. Humbaba says, "Warrior, you lied. You have manhandled me, yet you have sworn an oath by the life of your own mother Ninsun and your father, holy Lugalbanda." In fact, even the forest guardian Humbaba seems to hold a more respectful view of Gilgamesh's mother than the hero himself. In Humbaba's opening address to Gilgamesh, in Gilgamesh and Humbaba, the forest guardian lauds the role of Ninsun in raising such a powerful young son. He says, "Noble glory of the gods, angry bull standing ready for a fight, your mother knew well how to bear sons, and your nurse knew how to nourish children on the breast." In contrast, there's Humbaba there looking amazing. In contrast, in the standard Babylonian version of the epic, it is Enkidu's parentage that is the subject of Humbaba's opening address, with the forest guardian remarking on Enkidu's status as an orphan. In the standard version too, Humbaba is aware of Gilgamesh's parentage and seems to speak praisingly of Gilgamesh's background. Indeed, Enkidu's sensitivity about his lack of a family and home as an orphan seems to be the final straw for him in his conflict with Humbaba in the cedar forest. In Tablet 5 of the standard Babylonian version, Humbaba, who is captured by Enkidu and Gilgamesh, gives a speech where he gives a harsh polemic against Enkidu. Humbaba expresses the wish that he would have killed his adversary earlier when the opportunity presented itself if he had the time again. And he seems to compare Enkidu with a terrapin and a turtle, as well as the spawn of a fish. Although sufficient context for Mesopotamian views about turtles is somewhat lacking, the context of the speech indicates that the animal imagery is not meant to be complimentary. At the end of his speech, Humbaba adds the comment that Enkidu, like the spawn of a fish, does not know his father, and like the two reptiles, he did not suckle his mother's milk. These comments reflect the biological reality of reptiles as egg-laying animals, contrasted against the nursing habits of mammals, including humans. With the use of fish and reptile imagery, Humbaba is making a contrast of Enkidu with Gilgamesh, who is frequently noted in the text as having been suckled by his divine mother Ninsun. At the same time, he is undermining Enkidu's humanity. Humbaba's comments directly correspond to Enkidu's somewhat unusual genesis, as he has been created from clay, as well as his social status as an orphan. To put it bluntly, Humbaba is calling Enkidu a bastard, and while his words are somewhat strangely successful in evoking pity for his cause in Gilgamesh, the speech only further angers Enkidu. The orphan status of Enkidu is a serious concern in the text. At this point in the narrative, it has recently been the focus of an attempt by Ninsun to provide Enkidu with a type of family. of Enkidu's origins, Enkidu is deeply aware of his unusual circumstances of birth, and his desire for a family is one of the most notable aspects of his characterisation, as well as an important driver of the narrative. Enkidu's lack of a family is further the focus of a curse made against him by Humbaba prior to his death. Humbaba says, apart from his friend Gilgamesh, may Enkidu have nobody to bury him. The portrayal of orphans in the text using animal metaphors suggests that despite Ninsun's efforts to adopt Enkidu, a social stigma may have continued in Mesopotamian society for orphaned children. There's an irony to Gilgamesh's somewhat reckless attitude towards his parents in Gilgamesh and Humbaba. The importance of family and Gilgamesh's divine heritage are significant themes in the Sumerian narratives as well as the Gilgamesh epic. Further, we know that it is through Gilgamesh's mother that he receives the opportunity to access a fate beyond the reach of the rest of humanity, with a special role in the afterlife, where he eventually becomes a judge, as is shown in the myth of the death of Gilgamesh. So while Gilgamesh displays dismissive behaviour towards his parents, the narrative contrasts this behaviour against the speeches of other characters, thereby showing Gilgamesh's attitude to be anomalous and contributing to his characterisation as a fairly reckless young hero at this point in the narrative. Okay. Gilgamesh takes a more respectful tone towards his mother in the Akkadian versions of the Epic of Gilgamesh. The closeness of the mother-son relationship can be seen in many aspects of the narrative. Ninsun is Gilgamesh's confidant, his protector, and his counsellor. She promotes and formalises Gilgamesh's relationship with Enkidu, and she uses her divine influence to further her son's interests. The closeness between Gilgamesh and Ninsun is apparent in Tablet 1, where Gilgamesh twice goes to his mother to interpret dreams about Enkidu's impending arrival. As noted earlier, Ninsun also uses her influence with the sun god Shamash to gain divine protection for her son, and this proves to be the deciding factor in Gilgamesh's defeat of Humbaba the forest guardian. As seen with other mothers in Mesopotamian literature, Ninsun demonstrates the maternal qualities of sound wisdom and powerful protection. While her son's attitude towards her changes between texts, Ninsun is responsible for interpreting Gilgamesh's dreams, protecting him in battle, and finally assists him in transcending his mortality and becoming a deity. The very qualities of exceptionality and power that the hero seeks in his travels are offered to him through his parentage and his role as the king of Uruk. Okay, we've seen that. So we've seen that home for Gilgamesh, and indeed many Mesopotamian heroes, is a place of safety, protection, and legitimacy. Despite this, our hero feels compelled to set out on many long journeys. The first of these in Tablet 2 is motivated, somewhat ironically, by the desire to assist Enkidu in dealing with his homesickness, as well as the desire for fame, glory, and a lasting legacy. Unlike Lugalbanda, Enkidu is not a king, and he has neither a mother, at least prior to his adoption by Ninsun, nor a palatial home to miss. Yet Enkidu still experiences homesickness. The first suggestion of Enkidu's loneliness comes after his civilizing encounter with Shamhat. After this experience, Enkidu tries to return homewards to his herd, but finds he can no longer live among his former animal companions. The physical and emotional distancing of Enkidu from his herd is engineered by Gilgamesh, who predicts the events which will unfold following Enkidu's meeting with Shamhat, saying, "Enkidu's herd will be estranged from him, though he grew up in its presence." The estrangement of Enkidu from his herd is poignant, especially when placed in context with the Gilgamesh epic's continued focus on his lack of family. Being part of the herd's community and sharing their water brought happiness to his heart, a common result of close, positive social connections in Mesopotamian literature. While the narrative makes clear the benefits of the acculturation process, Enkidu's wide understanding, the process is undoubtedly bittersweet and involves significant loss. The motif of human-animal separation in Gilgamesh has been well elucidated by Barron, who notes the difficulties and costs of the transition from wild animal to civilized human. The growing distance between Enkidu and his origins are illuminated by his increasing violence towards animals, in a sharp contrast with his earlier role protecting them before he becomes civilized. Enkidu's homesickness shapes his characterization in the epic and shows an emphasis on questions of identity and considerations involving the importance of family and community. Enkidu's process of civilization is successful in that it leads into Gilgamesh, the man he was created to counsel and accompany. Yet despite the narrative's appreciation of the products of civilization, the acculturation of Enkidu is presented as not being entirely beneficial to him and involving much sacrifice. Enkidu moves from a state of happy innocence to acquiring reason, and his acculturation seems at times to be unwilling and emotionally confusing. The emotional register of nostalgia is a common feature of ancient mythology, especially prevalent in narratives involving travel and return. We could ask if a longing for another familiar place always relates to a geographical entity, or can homesickness be connected to a desire to return back to a particular time in our lives? The most plausible answer would be that homesickness for Mesopotamian heroes seems to involve both literal and esoteric concepts. It must be stressed the term homesick describes a modern emotional state which would have been unknown to ancient Mesopotamian audiences due to cultural and contextual differences, as well as differences in the perception of travel and time. But the term homesick in this paper is used as a shorthand to describe a condition where the current locus of the hero is contrasted negatively with a previously inhabited space or time, evoking Derrida's absent origin and reassuring foundation. The hero is separated from this other locus and is aware of the disconnection between the present and past state. Homesickness places an emphasis on the hero's desire to travel towards rather than away from home, either desiring to return to a geographical place or a previous time and state. The yearning for home creates a dichotomy between the 2 points of reference. The definition of homesickness here is admittedly very broad, in keeping with the frequently nebulous expression of homesickness in epic literature. The idea of returning to a simpler time, an idea commonly known in the modern day, may be classified as a type of homesickness in this definition, as the hero can often be seen to harbour the wish to return to their childhood home or state. So Gilgamesh is among the most well-travelled of Mesopotamian heroes, who are themselves not exactly a stay-at-home bunch. Yet, despite his evangelizing of epic travels to Enkidu and his many incredible journeys, Gilgamesh may also be said to experience a kind of homesickness. After meeting with the flood survivor, Utnapishtim, Gilgamesh learns that immortality is beyond the reach of humans and even quasi-divine beings like himself. Utnapishtim offers Gilgamesh an armadillo or heartbeat plant, a kind of runners-up prize in the place of immortality. While it won't make the hero live forever, he'll be able to return to his youth. Gilgamesh's search for an acquisition of the plant can be considered as an expression of longing to return homewards to the time of his youth. Prior to discovering the truth of his own mortality, Gilgamesh continually pushes onwards and often moves away from home. However, in contrast to his typical forward momentum, the plant's very nature is regressive. The placement of this episode involving the armadillo plant in the structure of the narrative is particularly interesting. It occurs just after Gilgamesh has accepted his mortality and just prior to his turning for home. Considered in this light, homesickness is particularly human as a condition in Mesopotamian epic literature, and one powerful enough to make even the most intrepid and prodigious traveller set their sights on a return voyage. For Gilgamesh, absence does make the heart grow fonder. The event of the young king's homecoming is emphasised by his praise of the walls of Uruk. Gilgamesh's speech firmly settles him back in his original geographic location while demonstrating his renewed appreciation for his home. So in conclusion, for the heroes of epic narrative in the ancient world, travelling far from home provided opportunities for the accumulation of fortune and glory. Modern scholarship generally accepts that travel in ancient epics was not solely measured in distance and time, but frequently involved more esoteric elements. Voyages may present opportunities for heroes to gain opportunities that are beyond the spectrum of most humans. Yet, along with the possibility for divine connection, there was the potential for a journeying hero to become disconnected from home and from community. Mesopotamian heroes undertake long journeys and take part in great deeds, resulting in fame and glory that often surpasses mortal time frames. But these journeys result in disconnection from home and the emotional experience of homesickness. The longing for home in the characterization of the heroes of Mesopotamian epic presents a truly universal experience in some of the world's most ancient literature and performs an important narrative function. Recent studies on emotions and affect in ancient narrative emphasize the importance of emotions not only as fixed and internalized expressions, but as forces which can be transformative and create action. As much as the benefits offered by far-flung places can improve the hero's social status, the emotional experience of homesickness plays a significant role in drawing the hero back homewards again at the end of his adventures. Because after all, even for a Mesopotamian hero, there is really no place like home. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Louise. We now have time for some questions. So if you have a question, just raise your hand and someone will bring a microphone over. I think we've got one with Ninwe and we've got one with Dr. Sada at the time. So we've got one in the front. And so, yeah, Dr. Sada?
Thank you. I believe the full version, the complete version of Gilgamesh was found in Ashurbanipal's library. So the question is, did it have a place in teaching, education, or was it just a tablet on a shelf waiting to be found later?
Thank you for this fabulous question. Yes, and so the Standard Babylonian version was found in the remains of the Royal Library of King Ashurbanipal. And I do think that the Epic of Gilgamesh, I have this theory that I'm quite happy to debate on, which is that the Gilgamesh Epic is in some ways a handbook for what not to do if you're a Mesopotamian king. Because he tends to do everything that you're not really expected to do. For example, Mesopotamian kings are meant to marry Ishtar, whereas he's like, no, don't want any of that. And so all the things he does, he kind of just goes around like a wild bull smashing things up, and yet somehow succeeds anyway. And there's this genre that's much later on, but also from the Middle East, which is called a mirror for princes. And I kind of wonder if the Gilgamesh epic is meant to be a bit of a mirror for rulers, as well as having something in it. I think something in it for everyone. Yeah.
Any other questions? I think one at the front, Edwina. No need for a microphone? Okay, no worries, go for it.
All right, thank you so much for wonderful. I couldn't help but draw thank you. I couldn't help but draw some parallels to Joseph Campbell's Hero with 1,000 Faces and the hero's journey of being 12 stages from departure to ordeals to the return. I've also been reading recently Maria Tata's Heroine with 1,001 Faces, and I couldn't help but think about Thetis and her nudging Achilles to his destiny, and Ninsun in the same way did the same for Gilgamesh. So I'm thinking she presented this idea that the feminine or the female or the mother has more of an essential role in the becoming of a hero.
Yes.
Which I find really fascinating. But also that the heroine's journey is the internal, transformational, emotional conquest rather than that external conquest or that prize that, most Greek heroes, for example, have. And again, I couldn't help but draw that comparison to Gilgamesh. So I'm just wondering if there are any other female examples of the heroine in Mesopotamian literature in a similar way to Ninsun, whether it's mother or heroine or any sort of thing like that, if you've ever come across that.
Oh, that's such an interesting question and a very learned question. I'm going to have to look up that book, the Heroine of 1001 Faces.
1001 Faces, Maria Tata, yeah.
So interesting. Look, I have become very interested, as you can probably tell, in Mesopotamian mothers recently, because even though it's obviously a very ancient field, goes back thousands and thousands of years. In scholarship, there is barely anything on Mesopotamian mothers. And this is not shown because there's a lack of interest in it in the ancient literature itself. There's so many powerful mother figures. So we've got Ninsun, but also if you look at even Tiamat, who is so frequently depicted as being sort of this sort of chaos monster. But if you look at the text, her role as a mother is so centralized, and also as a protective mother as well. And I think it's really interesting that you see mothers in Mesopotamian literature holding this role of being powerful protectors, but also being such a source of wisdom for their sons. And it's such an interesting example with Thetis, because Thetis is really the one who knows what's going on much more than Achilles does in Iliad. And I love the way that she is always trying to protect him and try to find a way around the prophecies. And I love that about Ninsun, how she is presented as being this religious specialist. She's the one who knows how to get Shamash on side. And I always think it's so interesting, and I'd be so interested in whether some of my other learned colleagues have thoughts, or if anyone has thoughts, because Ninsun is so prominent right at the beginning of Epic of Gilgamesh, and she and Gilgamesh have this close relationship, and then she just disappears. And we don't see her for the rest of the narrative. And I'm not quite sure why, but I think it's really interesting. Anyway, there's lots to think about. Thanks.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Dr. Louise. We're going to move on with the program. So our next speaker is Dr. Simo, who I'm sure everyone has a lot of questions for today. Professor Parpola is a renowned Finnish Assyriologist and one of the world's leading experts on the Neo-Assyrian Empire. Over the course of his distinguished career, he has dedicated decades to studying Mesopotamian history, language, and literature, with a special focus on cuneiform texts and the Epic of Gilgamesh. His extensive research and publications have deepened global understanding of Assyrian society, religion, and politics, while his advocacy for cultural preservation has helped ensure that Assyrian heritage continues to be recognized and valued around the world. Please welcome Dr. Simo Parpola.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear Assyrians, my present paper on the goddess Ishtar continues yesterday's paper on the god Ashur, without which it would not be complete. Mesopotamian sources present us with an extremely perplexing and seemingly contradictory picture of the goddess Ishtar. On the one hand, she was the august queen of heaven, seated on a starlight throne, and was called Ishtar of the stars. The queen of queens, lady of ladies, the goddess of goddesses, the most high, and the mistress of all lands. She was the creatress of the gods and all mankind, the mother of men, the merciful mother of those who give birth. She was pure, holy, innocent, wise and virginous, daughter of the moon, or Ishtar of wisdom, a veiled bride whose primary characteristics were purity, chastity, prudence, wisdom, and superlative beauty. From the earliest times on, her standing epithets were pure or holy, and virgin. She was associated with the planet Venus, and her most common symbolic representation was eight-pointed star. In Assyrian iconography, she is often depicted as a female figure surrounded by intense radiance. On the other hand, she also appears as a witch, a whore, and a madam running a pub or a brothel. In the sixth tablet of the Epic of Gilgamesh, she commands an army of prostitutes and approaches Gilgamesh, a seductive, carnal woman lusting for the beauty of the hero. Elsewhere, she is compared to the demoness Lilith and the demoniacal south wind. She is also said to perturb the Apsu, the cosmic ocean of knowledge, in the presence of Ea, her father. It must be pointed out, however, that such a negative image of the goddess is totally absent from Assyrian royal inscriptions, which consistently emphasize her holiness, exaltedness, and motherly aspects, while also presenting her as a bellicose virgin rushing against the enemies of the Assyrian king, as in the following passage from the inscription.